Gentlemen, I'm taking a look at the round of 16 here on my phone. It is slowly rounding out and looking fantastic as we welcome you into Good Night Qatar. Andy Petrillo alongside Jordan Wilson, Gareth Wheeler, Kristian Jack joining us from Qatar. We decided to give Ollie a day off. I mean, something about doing shows every single day, blah, blah, blah. But that's fine. He's resting. You're stuck with us. But we're going to break down the games of today. Of course, we're always going to talk about Canada and continue to dissect the World Cup that was for them and look ahead to other games as well, especially with the round of 16 just around the corner. KJ, let's begin, though, with some of the games that we just saw in Serbia and Switzerland. Switzerland will be moving on. They get the victory here. What did that game tell you, more particularly about the Swiss as they will move on?
Yeah, it tells me that they're a very professional side and they're dangerous. You know, it was a pleasure to watch this game again. You know, the context in the historical records of the World Cup is that it's the last group game that mattered in a 32 World Cup format in the men's game, and it went out with a bang, right? I mean, ultimately, the Swiss team started off well, and then Serbia got 2 goals from 2 brilliant strikers, and Switzerland could have wilted at that moment. They were down, they'd taken the lead, and they go down 2-1. How many teams come back in football when you lead and then go behind and then come back and then take the lead again? It does not happen very often, let alone in a big World Cup game like this. So I'm very impressed with Switzerland. I'm impressed with every player on the pitch. They don't carry players. They don't have true stars. Yes, Shaqiri's their main man. But in midfield, they've got a lot of good players. And Bolo was excellent again. And, you know, Portugal are going to be really up against it. I like this team. They've not got out of the knockout stages before, but this is a real chance. And this was, again, another example, Wheels, where Serbia, a lot of people's dark horses, got good individuals, didn't know how to get it done. And Switzerland, again, know how to get it done, and they showed it.
Very good attacking players, just absolutely porous defensively. Serbia, just far too wide open. Xhaka and Shaqiri both played inspired. They have the Albanian, Kosovan roots, and they were kind of inspired by it. Like, those sorts of emotions can go one way or the other. I thought they fostered them and used them in a good way in this game. It almost boiled over late, but they kept it together. This Switzerland side now have been to 5 straight major tournaments, and in the past 4, they've at least made the round of 16. I kind of call them the European Mexico, but now I can't use that line anymore because Mexico bowed out of this tournament. Switzerland always get through. They're going to pose a real test for Portugal because they're well organized. Freuler and Jack is sitting in front of a pretty well organized back 4. This is a very good team, Switzerland. I think that if Portugal can play their best and utilize the strengths that they have in their team, I think that they're a better side than Switzerland, but this is going to be no easy out in the next round. And I think it's deserving, the way that this group played out, that Switzerland are moving on. Newsflash to anyone. Any team at the World Cup, win your first 2 games and the rest don't matter. We've seen it with Spain. We've seen it with Portugal. We saw that with Brazil today as Cameroon played their part. But Swiss, they're just about the right team to go on from this group.
Yeah, and in that other match, as you just alluded to, it is Cameroon who defeats Brazil 1-0, but it doesn't really matter. Brazil's already moving on. And a lot of you have been saying, and Jordan, you've been one of them, where you're like, Brazil's so good that the players on the bench can form a 1A. You have a 1 and a 1A team. And they did make a lot of changes as well. Did it just kind of reaffirm your thoughts on this Brazil team and how far they can go here at the World Cup?
It did reaffirm it, Andy. Brazil made 9 changes today, and the level dropped a little bit. Like, I would say, and a game where they just don't need to really lose and they can still go on, and then they end up going on anyways just based on the other games or coming first in the group. But yeah, it reaffirmed for me that this is still the team to beat. This is the team that should win the World Cup with the depth that they have. Shout out to Martinelli today for getting a start and also just being, in my opinion, one of the best players on the pitch. If Brazil go down at any point in this tournament, the plethora of options they have to come on in the attacking third or even in midfield is huge. You played a game, Casemiro's been possibly the best player in the tournament, but the best player for Brazil. He sits today, doesn't get a minute, and they still look dangerous all over it. Brazil's 1B team could beat a lot of teams going into this round of 16. They look so dangerous, Andy.
Yeah, what did you make of that as well? Just, KJ, a lot has been made of a South American team has been picked to win this. A lot of people going back and forth between Brazil and Argentina. We'll talk about the round of 16 a little later on. Argentina will be in action tomorrow. But, just kind of looking at, again, the 9 changes that Jordan alluded to when it comes to Brazil and still not really missing a beat.
Yeah, look, it's strange to see them lose a game to Cameroon. I can't say I saw it because I was here. So that is a little bit disappointing from them. But maybe that's what they needed. Maybe that was their one game, their throwaway game. If they're going to lose the game of the World Cup, that's the one to lose, right? Let alone not anymore. So, look, I think that the players needed to fight for the cause to try and make sure that they give Chichi an opportunity to say, I want you to pick me. But I think they knew that this was their one moment. Like, this is almost as settled side as it can come now, no? Like, I know Neymar can come back in, but other than that, the rest of the players there, they're playing. They know they're going to be playing in the next round. I think it'll be a comfortable game for them. And we'll get into it later in the show, but there's some relative gifts here for Argentina and Brazil. That if, I know in a World Cup of shocks, if they're not meeting in a semi-final, it's going to take a ginormous shock to knock one of these two giants out of Qatar 2022.
The thing that was crazy in the end, KJ, Switzerland needed 1 goal to go on to win that group based on the Cameroon result, which would have thrown things out of whack. It would have been Switzerland, South Korea on the top end of the table, which would have really provided such a clear path for Argentina to go deep. If they ended up runners up in that group based on losing that game and throwing it away, they would have played Portugal in the next round. So that's what I was kind of watching, is how this would affect the draw inevitably. And still, by Brazil winning that group, we still have that collision course of Argentina-Brazil for a World Cup semifinal. And it's hard to argue that we won't see those two sides in that game.
But again, Wheels, that comes down to what you're saying, right? Like how you start the tournament and finishing the 2 games. Like Brazil, it almost looked experimental in the last game. We have to talk about Abubakar quickly, the double yellow to red, and a great finish by him. But probably one of the craziest things I'll see in football.
Can we stop the yellow card for taking the shirt off? I don't know. I'm so over that. Anyways, I hate that.
I miss the old days, Andy. We used to take it off and whip it around, and that was it.
Yeah. Imagine being the referee when you know that you have to stick to the letter of the law in order for you to make sure that the bosses give you another game in the knockouts, but you have to be the one who tells the hero that you've got to
plug your nose.
He shook his hand and smiled at him and then gave him the yellow and the red. You got to watch it back. It's very comical.
Yeah, these next 2 matches, it's hard to talk about one without intertwining the other one. KJ, I'll come back to you because Korea Republic, so South Korea defeats Portugal. They get the stoppage time goal. And because of that, it doesn't matter that Uruguay beat Ghana 2-0. The reactions from inside will show Luis Suarez in just a moment. But what did you just make of Korea getting that all-important goal? Because it's Portugal and Korea who are going through, Uruguay, Ghana going home.
Well, it's important to note again what a wonderful 4-team group can be. This was magnificent, this group. And if they played it all again tomorrow and the next 14 days, it would be so different again, because that's how competitive it is. Portugal needed Bruno Fernandes to be amazing against Uruguay because they rode their luck in that game too. And Bruno Fernandes and Bernardo Silva carried them in that game. So they've not been the best team in this group by a long margin either. They've got through. Korea Republic against Ghana, I saw it was one of the best games in the World Cup. Ghana played Portugal, and that was a 3-2 game as well. I think my biggest takeaway from this is just how passive Uruguay are with the quality on the pitch. And in the end, they won 2-0 today in a game they may have won more, but that's what's cost them. And they can argue all they want again with the sour grapes at the end towards the referee, but a team of that quality and that amount of players in the final third, when you think about it, I'm not even going to go through them all, they should be doing better. And they weren't very good in the World Cup, and that's come back to cost them. Well, South Korea were brave today. They went out and got what they needed to, albeit against the Portugal team that made changes. That helped them, again, playing a big team who'd already got 2 wins in the last game. That helps. But it's just another brilliant moment of this World Cup. The flavors of international football are there, and the Asian Confederation get 3 teams in the last 16 for the first time. I tell you, it was great drama, guys. I was there. The full-time whistle went just as they got to 2-1, and the 8-minute board came up 25 minutes down the street in the other stadium. And it's like, wow. And then suddenly they're all celebrating. Like, no, players are coming on. Don't celebrate. You've got to watch it. And they're watching it on the phone, on the pitch, waiting to find out the reaction. I posted a video live on my Twitter to see what it was like. But just again, great drama wheels, and fantastic to see a brave team in the Korea Republic get through.
Yeah. First off, I'm trying to figure out a way how we keep 4 team groups in 2026.
I got one.
See, this is what I need to rely on you, KJ. I've been racking my brain and nothing that I come up with works out. So we'll come to KJ for that after.
We have a lot of shows to get to that. Because we have to discuss that. But I want to know.
We need 4 team groups. Like this was brilliant in this group
did
today.
Uruguay stop pushing for that goal?
Yeah,
and that was their demise.
First off, there's a little bit of snobbery in the way that a lot of people worldwide look at football. This South Korea team beat Germany last World Cup as well, and we're full value to go on from this group. They have legs for days. They're fit. They have a star in Son who returned from a facial injury, sets up the goal. He had 3-4 players draped all over him. Just a wonderful story that's emerged in the team that finished 4th in 2002. But you're right, KJ, this is on Uruguay. This is a side in terms of personnel, in terms of makeup, that has to be getting out of this group. Diego Alonso, I'm not sure if he didn't respect that South Korea was going to come away with the result. He must have known it was 1-1 because the team stopped pushing for goals. They're up 2-0 against a team in Ghana, for all their fight and their attacking prowess, are in absolute shambles defensively. Uruguay could have put 5, 6, 7. He takes Pelistri off. He takes Nunez off. He takes Suarez off. What's he doing? Like, you need to know that your team needs goals. You just can't ride the luck and hope that the other game works out your way. If they scored more goals, then they would have gone on from this group. It's as simple as that. This is a team that didn't have a shot on target in their first game against South Korea. With so much talent in that team, it's just unforgivable. Style of play killed Uruguay here. And honestly, seeing the Suarez tears, it's a little bit of a revenge for Ghana. 12 years later, Ghana are going home, but they're thrilled. They were playing to the final whistle knowing that they had no chance to score 2 goals. They were making substitutes in stoppage time just to make sure that Uruguay didn't go through. People remember what happened in 2010. I was at Soccer City at that time in Johannesburg for that game. There were wild scenes. Ghana had been waiting for that moment, and I guess despite going home, they do get the revenge.
Yeah, and Jordan, I think we were talking about this the other day where the fan reaction in soccer, especially at the World Cup, is so amazing. It's every camera person's dream, producer's dream, right? The complete elation, the tears, the heartbreak. We saw that with Luis Suarez. He gets subbed off. He's sitting there. He's all like, we're up 2-0. And then he's looking up, and then he's seeing the score because they flash the score, and you see that Korea scores in stoppage time, and then the absolute tears, and then he's sitting there by himself in their area with his shirt over his head,
chewing on his shirt, biting on it.
Well, I don't know, Jordo.
He's done it before.
I don't know, Jordo, what you made of those scenes. If those scenes just caught you in the feels.
Oh, absolutely not. They catch me in the fields. I kind of sounded like my dad there, and I said, serves you right. In many respects to Luis Suarez. They dropped the ball. Manager dropped the ball as well. The sub he makes after the second goal just says, hey, we're going to defend and we're cool with the 2-0 win. It was silly, right? You have the foot on the neck of Ghana. Go punish them 3-4-0, and then you would have been riding to glory. So a decision that will haunt him for the rest of his life, absolutely.
Why am I picturing you calmly sitting on the couch? I'm Jordan, doesn't this as a player, don't you relate? Serves him right. I am just picturing complete calm, collected response by you.
Well, but I do understand the penalty claim. That was 50-50 for me as Cavani went down in the
Fair
box.
Enough.
Thought the defender did quite well to get his body in front, and I'm not sure, you didn't really see the right angle about whether the ball was more towards the defender or Cavani, but it was at least 50-50.
Either way, they are not moving on. Here's your round of 16. Here is your actual round of 16, which does begin tomorrow. This is very exciting, ladies and gentlemen. I can't believe the first round is now done and dusted. So tomorrow you can actually watch Netherlands taking on USA, and also Argentina will be taking on Australia. So we'll find out. As you can see, that's the top left bracket there, the 2 teams that will be moving on to face each other there. When we return here on Good Night Qatar, still a lot to talk about and dissect when it comes to the Canadian men and their performance at Qatar 2022. KJ, we didn't have you yesterday, so I want to get your thoughts. You were down on the ground, able to get face-to-face time with those players. How were they feeling? What were they saying? And are they already looking ahead to 2026? Let's discuss the Maple Leafs next on Good Night Qatar. Welcome back into Good Night Qatar. Andy Jordan, KJ Wheels still with you. KJ, you were on the ground. You had a chance to speak to some of the players after the game yesterday for Canada, losing to Morocco 2-1. The tournament now officially done. We knew they weren't moving on to the round of 16, but had one more game to go. Just take us on the ground. Be our eyes and ears and what you saw and what stood out to you in seeing the body language, demeanor, and just some of the things that the players were saying.
First thing that stands out to me is just what a great bunch of balanced individuals they are. You know, I think that really needs to be spoken about. They have the ability to understand the accomplishment, act in a pretty classy way, and then understand the evaluation process where they were not good enough. And I think that you can do all of that if you're individuals who are balanced. Ultimately, you're allowed to be mad about things. And disappointed and still show, I think, quite a lot of charisma and just general class. And that's what this team is. That's what we should be blessed in this country about. It's just what a great bunch of individuals they are. That said, I think, ultimately, they'll learn from this. And not every defeat leads to learnings unless you're open to it. But this team is. And so that was definitely something that I was really quite proud of the way they handled it. Speaking to, I think, 8 or 9 of the players, they were disappointed. And I think that most of them certainly weren't surprised. Most of them have played at a high enough level to understand what they were expecting. It wasn't like they came off the pitch and went, whoa, they're better than we thought. There was never that kind of intimidation or shock. At the end of the day, there was a realization that they weren't as good as the other teams, but they weren't shocked by it. And I think that, again, speaks to just the level of maturity and intelligence, the way that they've been going into these games.
First off, KJ, you're right. The way that they've handled themselves, it's been so impressive. We were remarking, we had a call earlier in the day, and I said, playing for the men's national team in this country, you sometimes ended up as the butt of the joke, right? You were the punchline for so long. Up until the last 2 or 3 years, it's been that way. And I know former players, it bothers them. They've had a lot of pride in their commitment to the team. I think these guys get that and understand the responsibility in taking it forward and doing it in the right way as well. And that's absolutely what they've done. And I'm glad that that's kind of the impression that you get on ground level as well. I just wonder, because there were some unanswered questions coming out of the game. I'm not sure if you heard any more about why Jonathan David didn't start that last game, what prohibited Stefan Eustachio from playing, some of the decisions that were made, because, although that there is, a great deal of pride, there were still some questions about how that last game played out.
Yeah, so Eustachio couldn't play. He wasn't well enough. He wasn't fit enough. He's just feeling really, really tight. And, it just wasn't getting any better. So there's just no way that he could play. We asked about in the press conference to John Herdman about Jonathan David, and he said it was a decision on fatigue, based on physical and mental fatigue. He felt that he wasn't quite, prepared to play him. He referred to the game against Mexico in Edmonton and said, I didn't start him in that game, and it went well for us in the system at that point. So we used that as a reference point. So that goes to think, that shows us what John was thinking heading into the game, where he was thinking a little bit along the similar lines. That being said, I've been pretty open with my discussion in this, where I thought it was the wrong thing from the start. And I did a radio hit today in Canada where they asked me about why it was such a disappointing World Cup for Jonathan David. And I had to put the brakes on it a little bit because I think it's gone way over the top. Ultimately, in the first game against Belgium, he had 2 of the 3 best chances that they could play. He has to get in those positions in order to score them. First of all, when I don't want to ever play that card that you see things better live, because I know what a privilege I'm in. But the running off the ball that this guy does is something that doesn't always get picked up on broadcast television, and maybe it doesn't get seen by casual fans. But the pressing he did against Belgium, I thought was very underrated. The runs he makes are outstanding. I've never seen a Canadian striker make runs like him. Never. So, in the second game, it didn't go well for him. It wasn't necessarily the profile for him. And I was shocked he didn't start the third game, Wheels, to be honest. That was the impression I had. But, in the list of concerns you start to write down about Canada, you'll be writing a long time before you write the name Jonathan David.
Right.
Agreed.
Mhm.
KJ, and we talk about the blessing and the curse of being a striker. Like you score one of those expected goals, which are all difficult, but he gets his head on one or maybe a tap in. He's a hero, right? But no one's taking in all the runs he does off the ball, the way he absorbs pressure, the movement he does to make other people free. The football nerds are the ones who are taking in the day-to-day or all the movements. We'll look at that. But people are like, oh, well, he went to a World Cup and he didn't score, but he plays for Lille. It's just like, the blessing and curse of being a striker. Personally, how I want to remember this team or how I'm going to remember them is they're representatives. Like, you have kids now that are living on the same street as Tajon Buchanan or Junior Hoylett in Brampton or in North Edmonton or in Montreal or all across this Canada, this beautiful nation, thinking and dribbling down their driveway or whatever it might be, shouting out names like Tajon Buchanan, Jonathan David, Kyle Larin. Like, this has never been the case. Me growing up as a Canadian boy wanting to play, when a World Cup was on, I was yelling out different names. But now in Canada, we have a group that we can call our own that are so accessible and tangible. We could grab them if we want to. We grew up in similar areas that they grew up in. So this is what it is. Now you have kids looking at soccer and saying, man, I could do this. And we could talk about it just being the World Cup, but it could permeate into other things. Like if Alphonso Davies could be a talked about best top left back in the world, then there are Canadian kids feeling like, hey, the sky's the limit for me. I can make it in whatever I need to make it in.
Right. You're absolutely right about that. Like, we never kind of had that belief. We never had a pathway when we were kind of growing up, Jordan. I want to know, because the expectations basically set whether or not you thought that this World Cup was successful for Canada. I think that the expectations did get a little out of whack or overblown about the expectation for Canada. I agree with you, KJ. Like, this is kind of what I expect. I didn't expect them to go out and boss Belgium not the way they did, but it's kind of what I expect. Where do you think some of those misplaced expectations came from?
I think obviously casual fans, I don't think they probably knew the golf and quality. Maybe that certainly helped fuel it. Maybe casual members of the media, I don't know. But I do think it's okay for us to be wanting more and be disappointed in some regards the way that they played without expecting them still to win. There's a difference. I think that the way they played against Belgium exceeded most people's expectations and they didn't get what they need. I think the way they played against Croatia, I think was lower than most people's expectations. And I think the first half against Morocco was the same. I was very disappointed the way that they set up. I was very disappointed in the way that they didn't necessarily play their best version of themselves against Morocco. And in the second half, they turned that around, and that was very important, as you guys covered on the show yesterday. So, look, I don't think many people expected us to see Canada get through the group here. I think they would have liked to have seen them get points, but ultimately they were the fourth seed in a very difficult group. But there's very fine lines in this World Cup, and it could have gone either way very quickly for them. Everyone's talking about Spain could still win this World Cup and what an absolute unmitigated disaster Germany were. Well, go look at the results. Both lost to Japan, both beat Costa Rica, and they drew with each other, right? So just look at the difference in contrast. There's so many. I just watched Switzerland, and we think they could go beat Portugal. They were one goal away from getting knocked out here. There's so many of those examples today. So the fine lines are there in sport, and it could have gone the right way for Canada in the end. They were very unlucky. And in the end, they go home with nothing. But, I do think that the expectations were a little bit too high, but we can also want them to play better than they did in those games.
Fine. I'll be the bad guy in this one. I'll be the Debbie Downer here a little bit, KJ, because, you just mentioned teams like Japan and who they were able to beat. Canada beat them. Costa Rica, that third game mattered to them. They were the fourth team in CONCACAF and had to go to a playoff. Like when we do talk about expectations, the team itself gave us those expectations and what they did in CONCACAF. Did they punch above their weight? No. They played to their strengths. They finished first. They never lost to Mexico or USA, right? The giants of CONCACAF along the way. They actually had a pretty good showing at the Gold Cup. They took Mexico to extra time for Mexico to get that goal to move on. It was really a brain fart in the first minute of the game against the USA that they could never recover from 1-0. But they have always been, head to head with a lot of these teams in the last 2 years. And then because of the way they played against Belgium, I'm gonna say the expectations in many ways were dead on given the current circumstance, right? Like, not Croatia was in the final 4 years ago, that's fine. But currently, Canada has been playing really well. I mean, do you not get a sense though, KJ, that, and I've heard some players say this, that they actually didn't play their best?
Oh, they definitely didn't play their best. No doubt about it. That's what I was hinting to before. I was disappointed the way that they played in half of the time here. The complete game against Croatia and the first half against Morocco, so 50%. But I'll just say this to your point that you just said. Sometimes, it's not just about outcomes. Do you want to be Costa Rica at this World Cup or do you want to be Canada? Costa Rica got absolutely annihilated by Spain. It could have been 11-12-0, okay? They couldn't get the ball. I watched them live against Japan. They were awful. Absolutely awful. They played 10 men behind the ball. Absolutely nothing to be inspirational about at all. They had one shot deflected that went over the goalie and they won 1-0. Okay, the Germany game, every credit, but that's why they got to the third game that mattered, playing a very negative style of football. And that's not where Canada needs to be as we get people to start to galvanize in this country. Ultimately, they need to be entertained and they need to have games like they played against Belgium. If they stuck 10 men behind the ball and they were negative, they may well have got to a third game, but that was never going to be the way this Canadian team played.
So is that the question then? What you do next? Sorry, Wheels, I know you want to jump in here. It's what you do next, because at the end of the day, other than getting the historic goal, they completely matched, as far as no points, right? No results, -5 when it comes to goal differential. Then the team, in 1986, they matched that. But is the difference, are they better equipped to move forward to be prepared for 2026?
I think they absolutely are. At tournaments like this, everything needs to go right for you to maximize on your potential. Like, it's such a quick tournament. Form of the players coming in. I'll say this again. I don't think we properly stated just how important and how crucial that loss to Stefan Eustáquio not being able to play in this team actually is. Like, central midfield, an area of weakness. There was no help across the back line. I mean, you're playing the same back three. There's no depth at that position. So when your margins are that thin, like over the course of World Cup qualifying, losing Davies, that seemed like it was going to be a death blow. It's incredible that it wasn't. Like, Canada were able to take advantage where other teams weren't, with the difficult travel, with some of the conditions that they played in. They're playing games in snow and ice, and like, Canada tilted qualification into their favor. Here on a level playing ground, MLS players not in season, no Eustáquio, Hutchinson not playing heading in. Like, it was just too much to overcome. I think it showed the limitations within this side more than anything else. And I don't think it does anything to kind of sway or take us away from recognizing what the potential actually is. Because you're right, it's there. And there is a better version of this team that we will probably see in the not so distant future.
Hey, good news is the World Cup goes until December 18th, which means we're still going to be talking Canada in all the days in between. So we'll, of course, look ahead and why we believe that they're better equipped to improve on, and maybe who's in the pipeline, who we could see playing on this team. Again, the biggest tournament that's coming up next for them will be Gold Cup. Like, who's going to be in net for them? Like, I'm really curious. Do you put Milan Borjan? Is it Max Crepeau if he comes back from injury, or is it someone else? So stay tuned, Canada, because we have a lot more Canadian chatter in the soccer world coming up here on Good Night Qatar. But when we come back, we do have to look ahead to tomorrow, because the round of 16 begins. We're going to take a look at Netherlands, USA, and Argentina, Australia. Stay with us. Welcome back, everybody. Here's the schedule for tomorrow. The round of 16 begins. Netherlands taking on USA. Pulisic ready to go, having himself quite a good laugh at his press conferences, people trying to figure out what exactly he injured. But he's good to go. We're not talking about it anymore. Argentina.
Draw us a picture, Andy. Draw us a picture.
Listen, my artistic skills are strictly shared with those of you behind the scenes. But let's put it this way. A lot of people were wondering, hey, what's going on over there? And he clarified that it was more of a lower abdominal bone kind of issue because people were concerned. We were concerned that he's good to go. And he himself had a good laugh about it. But let's begin, KJ, with USA Netherlands. Our boy Ollie, who's not here today, is not that high on the Netherlands. He just he just thinks that given the legacy and the history of this team, they're not exactly playing inspiring football. You have the USA who's been making a ton of chances, but haven't really been prolific in finding the back of the net. What are you expecting?
I like the Americans a lot because of their toughness. They're really mentally tough. They look like a really united group. Midfield, they keep winning midfield battles. They cause a big problem for England, and that England are better than the Dutch. So you're right, and Ollie's right again as usual. They're uninspiring, and the most inspiring thing about them is Louis van Gaal's press conferences. So when they get on the pitch, they're absolutely dull. Now they could go out and beat the Americans, but they've been awful to watch so far. And I like the chances that Greg Berhalter's team's got here. I really do. It's going to be a tight game. It's going to be I don't think there's going to be a ton of goals in it. But if the U.S. can get that one goal, I like the way that they played without the ball, depending on how long McKennie can go. But the other thing is Weah's had a great World Cup, a lot of pace, and that will be a problem as well against a very good Dutch back line. So can't wait to go there. I'll be there. I'm really looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to take the Netherlands? I'll take the Netherlands. I'll defend my boy Louis van Gaal here. I'm just not sure.
Do it.
Pulisic is going to be good to play, to be honest with you. McKennie certainly can't play 90 minutes. I've seen enough on the Netherlands in major competitions to know that this team regularly takes it to extra time and oftentimes penalties. And with a great defensive team, a team with great defensive shape, I question how the United States are actually going to break them down. This side has moved on past the round of 16 in every World Cup they played in over the last 80 plus years. 80 plus years. They haven't lost under Louis van Gaal in 18 games he's been manager. And van Gaal in the World Cup, his Dutch sides haven't lost in 90 minutes in a World Cup game in 10 straight times. The Dutch are difficult to beat. They're boring to watch. That's fine, but they're difficult to beat. I'm just not sure the U.S. has enough.
Argentina taking on Australia. Give me one, maybe you have multiple reasons, Jordan, as to why Argentina will be the one to advance to the quarterfinal.
Outside the obvious, Lionel Messi, I'll say this is the best Argentinian side I've ever seen. They look dangerous going forward, and they're starting to be the team that we've talked about before the tournament, like playing with urgency and having different guys that can hurt you. I just think they're winning this game as well. No disrespect to the Aussies, but they can only play one way, which is counterattack football and sitting guys behind the ball. Messi and company will break you down, whether it be in 90 minutes or 120. So for me, it's a no-brainer of who's winning that match.
If Australia were
Go on, KJ.
to upset them,
Go on.
KJ, if they were to upset them, would that be more shocking than Saudi Arabia beating them? What are the chances the Socceroos can do this?
Very, very slim. They say in football, sometimes 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10 times the team will beat them. You always get that one. I think it might be 99 out of 100 in this one, but I guess 1 out of 100 they've got a shot. I think it would be a bigger shot than Saudi Arabia because it's a knockout game. So the only chance they've got really is from a set piece or an early goal where they can start to really put them under pressure. As I said, the one thing to go against Argentina is that when things do not go their way, it is an absolute crisis right away. So if somehow the Aussies can get a goal and then suddenly the pressure turns on, the wick goes up big time pressure in the crowd. So that could be the only chance, but I'm struggling to think, and I love this tournament and these World Cups, I'm struggling to think of a last 16 game where I felt so certain. It's so one-sided in the last few years of this one.
Yeah. Well, here's what's coming up on Sunday. The round of 16 matchups has France taking on Poland in the early match, and then later on it'll be England versus Senegal. And there's always pressure, KJ, on England. And that's also because of past performances. They have looked good. They really looked good in 2018. They obviously went to the final at the European Championship. What gives you belief that they can move on to the quarterfinal?
Well, Phil Foden's playing, so that gives me a lot of belief because he's class and he needs to play more. So I think that's a big factor. Southgate stumbled on players here who are in tremendous form, and there's no longer reliant on Harry Kane. And that's really important. Kane, I still think has got goals in him in this tournament, but he hasn't carried the team like in 2018. They're way more of a team now. No much more of an emphasis on Kane, even in the Euros, just over a year ago. So, it doesn't matter whether it's, Saka or Sterling coming off the bench, or Foden and Rashford. They've got players in the final third that can make a difference and can open teams up here. So I think they had their once, that boring game against the US. That was a stalemate and didn't mean as much. And I think they found their 11 now that will go forward in the knockout stages. I said before, I think Senegal are a difficult team. They're a threat, but I do think they play a lot. I don't think they play traditionally like an African team. I think they play a lot more like an English team, and I think that will suit England.
There's only one Phil Foden. Wheels.
Maybe, unless Gareth Southgate picks the wrong team, which I wouldn't put it past him, makes changes too late, wouldn't put it past him. Are England ready for a fight here? Because that's what Senegal's going to bring to the table. I understand no Idrissa Gueye, no Chick Kiote, both players unavailable. Idrissa Gueye through suspension. But Senegal, they're fighters. This side know what it takes to win. They won the African Cup of Nations last time around. They had to beat Egypt over 2 legs. Another very good side to even qualify for the World Cup. I know they've conceded a goal in every game here, but they're robust defensively. They have a Premier League goalkeeper, a very good one. Best goalkeeper in the world last year, and Mendy. Koulibaly's excellent at set pieces. A lot of familiarity with the English players as well, with a lot of English-based players in the Senegal side. If the game gets so slow, which I predict it will, I'm not sure who that favors. I think England needs to play with tempo here, but they don't oftentimes do that. So it depends what version of England shows up.
France versus Poland. A lot of people didn't think France would get out of the group. The curse of winning the World Cup and how the previous, since Italy had won it in 2006, not getting out of your group after that, but also because of all the injuries that they were coming into this World Cup with. But they do advance, and they're taking on Poland, whose goalkeeper has been outstanding, Jordan. But, can France get past them? Give me a reason why they are not intimidated by Poland's goalkeeper.
Szczesny's been the goalkeeper of the tournament, but I'm sorry to say, Andy, that he's getting lit up when France take the field.
No.
Griezmann, Mbappe, Giroud, and Dembele. Those are my reasons why France are going through. The offensive chemistry between these four, they're so good they can go all the way. Now, the deficiency lies in what it looks like when they're tested in the midfield and when they're tested with players running at their back four. They're not the same France team that won the World Cup 4 years ago. And maybe that's the only Achilles heel, but you could expect this French team to go and score goals. It's just if they're able to defend.
Mm-hmm. Very difficult to make a case for a side that hasn't beat France in 40 years and has had 5 shots on target this entire tournament. But I will say this, they had 4 clean sheets before their last game against Argentina, and they were difficult to play at times over the course of that game. When you have Lewandowski in the team and you have a goalkeeper like Szczesny, they're going to have a chance. They're going to have to park the bus. They're not going to have to do anything different. They're going to have to defend, hit, and hope. That's their only way forward here, and hope that playing European competition, I do think it's favorable that they're playing European competition rather than a team from another continent. Perhaps that will play a little bit into their advantage here. France has been vulnerable to an upset over the last year. It'll take something here in this game for Poland to persevere, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, it's going to be a massive shock if they lose that game. I mean, in many ways, I'll just say this. It's a perfect opponent for them right now, but I will worry as France continue that they've played slow, pedestrian teams in all 4 games.
Mm-hmm. We'll see how that one pans out. And there are more round of 16 matchups as the group stage officially ended today. We're going to take you through those other games next here on Good Night Qatar. Here's a look at Monday's schedule in this round of 16 matchup. It's Japan taking on Croatia. Brazil will face South Korea. We just discussed the Koreans and their great game today in order to move on to the round of 16. So let's begin. How about we start with the Brazil and Korea, KJ, first, and give me a reason why Brazil, is a team that maybe you continue to believe will be the team to go all the way to the final.
It's going to be tough.
I'll take Vinicius Jr. because I don't think people are talking about him enough, and he didn't play today, I don't think. So I think he could come back in, and as I said earlier in the tournament, there's going to be games where this guy's going to win it on his own. He's got so much potential that I think one day he could be the world's greatest player. He's just got everything about him, and he's so powerful. I wrote today, as I did a little bit of a team of the tournament so far, the players I've seen. In the dribble, he's one of those where he's like a superhero, where he's so powerful, you expect the ground to just fall away as he goes by. He's just so powerful, and I think that South Korea are going to really struggle with that. Look, there's a lot of things for Brazil to be the reason why they're going to win this game. I'm just picking one of many. But yeah, this much like Argentina versus Australia, I think will be very comfortable for them.
Nah, but Jordan, you're not allowed. No cop-outs here. You have to make a case for Korea here and a reason why you think they can move on.
You know me well, Andy. I don't cop out. I'm going to say Sun. And I'm going to say every single one of those Koreans that fight, like that has to be accounted for something. Today, seeing the visuals of them crying and what it means to them to make it to the round of 16, I'm going to say that's the reason. They play great football. As Will said, they have legs for days. They fight to the bitter end. And when you have a superstar that humbles himself and works hard as the hardest working player for the team, it permeates. It's infectious. So I'll say that's the reason why they could have a chance against my pick, Brazil.
That hurt you just a little bit, though, because Brazil is your pick. Japan, Croatia. Give me a reason, Wheels, for Japan.
I like Japan. I think they can beat Croatia here, which I don't think would be that much of an upset. This team has lulled both Spain and Germany into a false sense of security. John Herdman said this before their warm-up match against Japan, that they have some of the most intricate and intelligent pressing techniques that he has seen, and their ability to strike and their fearlessness in attack makes them a difficult team to play against. Croatia won't fancy this because it's going to force them out of their comfort zone. Croatia were downright poor against Morocco. We're obviously good against Canada. And if Romelu Lukaku could have finished his breakfast, then Croatia would have been out of this tournament. I think they're very fortunate to be here right now. Alongside with really liking what Japan's done against those two superior European opponents to me, Croatia, remember, en route to the 2018 final, how safe and conservative they play come the knockout round of competitions. In 2018, they went to penalties against Denmark, went to penalties against Russia, took them extra time to beat England. I think it was like a 109th minute goal there before being played off the field against France. So if Croatia comes out and plays safe that way and guarded and conservative, I think they're asking for trouble against this Japanese team that you hope learned their lesson from maybe taking their foot off the gas a little bit against Belgium in 2018, conceding those 3 goals late that dumped them out of the competition. This Japanese team is definitely good enough to win this game.
Make a case for Croatia, though, KJ.
I agree with everything Will says. The thing about Japan is they don't give presents. They don't give mistakes up. And that's why they can come on the right end of things when they don't have a lot of possession. But if Croatia play at the highest level that they can play, they will win. If they can get that midfield going, Kamada's a special player, by the way, for Japan. You got to stay away from him. But when Croatia are at their best is when their midfielders, and we've got our own star midfielder on the show, he knows what I'm going to talk about, is when their midfielders receive the ball on the turn and can get away from the players who press them immediately and get into space. That's the way that they're going to be effective, because they don't have tons of pace in the front three. So they've got to be able to drive the ball forward and then feed the front three. They cannot allow the front three to create that space by pinning them back with the runs, and then suddenly the defense drops because of them. So that's what it's going to have to be. As usual, Modric, Kramaric is going to get fed by Modric, Kovacic, and Brozovic. And if them three have the game that they need to have again, they'll win the game because they're too good for Japan.
Well, by the end of the day, Tuesday, gentlemen, we're going to know what the quarterfinals will look like because these are the final round of 16 games. Morocco taking on Spain, followed by Portugal and Switzerland. So let's begin here with Portugal, Jordan. I'm going to give you an easy one and why you think they have a chance of advancing over Switzerland.
Sorry, Andy, what's your question? Portugal?
Yeah, I mean, you recognize that guy, right?
So now I can. Sorry, I had a moment, guys. Cristiano Ronaldo is not even going to be in my talk. I'm going to talk about the midfield with Bruno Fernandes, Neves, and Bernardo Silva. These guys, this is a three that will provide obviously balls into the box. But out of the last 5 goals for Portugal, I'm not even counting the little flick that he's claiming Ronaldo. It's other guys in Portugal that are putting in a shift. This is a reason why I think they could actually go far in this tournament. It's just who they meet, right? We don't really know that. But I'm going to say out of their midfield 3 is one of the best I've seen in this tournament.
You were still basking in the compliment of KJ, saying, look, we have a great midfielder on our show, and you're still doing this. Yeah. You don't even hear my question.
Barry Horowitz.
You don't know what you were doing? Yeah.
KJ knows, man. KJ knows.
Well, KJ's going to counter you right now, and you're going to tell me why the Swiss are going to move through.
Intelligent game managers who won't give away many chances. And they'll love the fact that they're underdogs coming into this game. They are the perfect team to allow everyone to talk about Cristiano Ronaldo. The whole crowd will all be over it. Oh, and by the way, I'm sure anybody who's there will get an announcement. A player to watch as being Cristiano Ronaldo. I've heard it 3 times now. The player to watch is Cristiano Ronaldo. Well, guess who doesn't care about that? This lot. They're happy if you make it about Ronaldo and Portugal because they're happy to be the underdogs. It will suit them absolutely fine. And if they make it a nasty, boring game, they can definitely come out on the end of it because they don't give away many chances.
This one could be tight, Morocco and Spain, just because the way both of them have been playing. So, Wheels, you got to tell me, give me a reason why Morocco can beat Spain.
Yeah, I'll take both sides here because I know we're tight for time. These two sides played in 2018 to a 2-2 draw, and Spain needed a late goal to come away with a point in the final match of that. Morocco is buoyed by incredible support. KJ was in the stadium. I think it matters. I think that Amrabat in a physical Moroccan midfield caused problems. It's an experienced and high quality back 4 that I think Spain, like their biggest question is, when they're not playing a minnow like Costa Rica, whether they can just take over games and provide the requisite scoring. Who is that, Morata? Or are you relying on young players, Pedri and Gavi, to go in there and have a big influence on a game where you're playing against a team with all kinds of experience in it? I think that this game can go either way. It's a true pick 'em for me. 2 teams familiar with one another, 2 teams with all kinds of quality as well. This is going to be an intriguing matchup, and I think both teams will be fearless and try to come out and attack in this game as well.
Hey, I keep track of the time, by the way. But yes, we do have to go to break because when we come back, we're going to look back at the group stage. Who surprised us? Who disappointed us? Feel-good moment. Golden Boot front runner. Let's discuss on Good Night Qatar. We are saying goodbye to the group stage in Qatar here on Good Night Qatar. So let's look back at what was, shall we? First up, rapid fire here, KJ. Which team surprised you?
Australia surprised me. No one gave them a prayer to get through the group. They got through the group and they took the lead in all 3 games. Biggest surprise for me, the Aussies.
Wheels?
The United States, I feel bad. I didn't give them a chance. I thought they were gutless, lifeless heading into this tournament. I couldn't have been more wrong, and I'm happy to say it.
Jardo.
The U.S. I also said that they had no identity in the beginning of the tournament, and they proved me wrong. They look like the hard-nosed U.S. really well. That I love.
Yeah. So harsh. KJ, which team disappointed you?
Denmark disappointed me the most. We talked about this week already. I watched them live in that big game and they needed to win. They were awful, negative, lack of ideas. Euro semi-finalists, not a difficult group. They should have got through and they didn't. Very disappointed in the Danes, who Jordan knows I love.
Wheels?
Same thing. I don't mean to piggyback off KJ. They were downright poor. I can't believe losing Thomas Delaney was that much of an issue. And they named all these slow, prodding forwards. Like there was no pace in the team as well. Exceeding. They're the most disappointing by far, Denmark.
Jordo?
It's unanimous, Andy. It is Denmark. They were embarrassing. I called them a dark horse, but I'm just going to throw someone else in there, Belgium as well. To only score 1 goal this whole tournament, that's also embarrassing.
How about this, KJ, quickly? Who do you think is going to get the golden ball? Who's a front runner?
Messi.
Wheels?
I think it's Messi too. I'll throw Casemiro.
Wilson?
I'm going to throw someone different in there. I'm going to say Morata for Spain.
Okay. All right. It's going to be a good little battle here. There we go. Rapid fire. Gotta go. Feel good moment. I don't know about you guys, but to me, again, it was just seeing, the national anthem being played at a men's World Cup.
And spending time with you.
Word on that one.
Spending time with you guys.
Feel good moment today. South Korea.
Yeah.
There you go. Good night, everybody. Let's do it again tomorrow.